So this is the front fuel tank from my John Deere B that I've been working on. If you see right here what I'm dealing with, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a gas tank in this bad a condition before, as far as, you know, what's on the inside. So at this point I'm shifting gears just temporarily from the inside of the tank to the outside, and let me bring you in a little closer here. This is what I have to deal with here. It's just right here on this corner. It's kind of a strange place for this thing to have rotted out like that. Okay, so here's what I have at this point. Besides that rot right in there, the metal all around it was very thin. So there wasn't anything to work with as far as patching, even though we couldn't see holes. It was too thin. So I cut out all the bad stuff and, you know, got us down to good metal so we could maybe potentially patch it. But I really don't know if that's going to be worth it. Let me show you the inside, and I think you might agree with me. See if I can get the light in here for us. Have you guys ever seen a tank this bad? You can see how bad it is over there. It's just, I can hardly even get a screwdriver in there. The one thing about all this nastiness on the bottom of the tank is that I think it actually prevented the bottom of the tank from rusting out, because the tank looks pretty solid underneath. So let's say, just for a minute, hypothetically, that somehow I could clean the bottom of that tank and get it back to a pristine metal again. We still have some rust on the inside of the tank on the top side underneath. These are where the straps went, and you can see we got some serious rust going on right there. And if you look on the inside, up in there, you can see what I'm talking about, I think. Yeah. So I think you guys know me well enough. I am not afraid of work. I'll do the work if I think there's going to be a good result. But between the nastiness on the bottom of the tank, the rust on the top inner side of the tank, and of course this huge hole that we would have to patch, I'm not even going to attempt it. I can't bring myself to throw it in the landfill. I think I'll keep it for a while, but we're going to get a different tank. And here we are. I think when I left you with this tank before, on that previous video, I said I might have to source a new tank, and in fact I did. It took me a couple months to find one, but I finally found one on eBay, and it's already been cleaned and refurbished, I guess you'd call it, and it's in very good condition. They put coating on the top, as you can probably see. Looks like they brushed it on, and they also put coating on the bottom, but they left it smooth so it would look nicer when we paint it. There are a couple dings down here, but nothing significant. Overall, this tank is in very good condition. The good news about the old tank is that the fuel cap was in excellent condition. So I soaked this in Evaporust for 24 hours. It's still a little dirty inside, but the rust is gone. So this is going to work with this tank, of course, because they're both original equipment. So let me show you the inside now. I don't know what kind of coating they used. It doesn't look like the typical red coat. Looks like some other product, but it looks excellent in there. It looks pristine and clean. So the first thing I'm going to do is paint this. So it is green, and once the paint dries, then we can get it back in the tractor. You know, we're not going to be able to see the top half of the tank, but we still want it to look nice, right? Regardless. Of course, we will see the fuel cap, but we're going to paint the whole thing green anyway and make it look nice. So I'll let this top coat dry, and then I'll flip it over, do the bottom, and I'll bring you back when it's all done. In the meantime, let's take a look at the sediment bowl that came off the tractor. This looks pretty much like the inside of the fuel tank does. Oh my God. Wow, I wish you guys could smell this. So, I mean, how long would fuel need to sit in a fuel tank before it gets to this state? You know? So while we're waiting for thinking about the sediment bowl and getting the parts clean, let's focus on these straps a little bit. There are 3 of these in total that clamp the fuel tanks, plural, to the hood. 2 clamp the front tank and 1, I think, clamps the rear tank. This hardware in here is just terribly rusted. So I want to get new hardware. We'll keep these little clamps, of course, because we need those. But I want to get this hardware off and get some fresh at the hardware store and get these clamps in the Evaporust. Need to get the bolts out of the clamps. I think they've kind of rusted themselves to the clamps. So we'll just knock these out in the vise real quick. Well, 2 of these things were tack welded for some reason. So 2 came out easily, and 2 I had to fight with just a little bit to get to break the welds. But let's throw these 4 things into the Evaporust. I think these will turn out nice after a day or 2. I'll get some new hardware for that, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Now, the other thing I want to fix is the radiator shutters. If you remember from the previous videos, all the linkage and components for the radiator shutters are still present. They're just all frozen and rusted in place. But the turn handle is there, linkage is still here to here, and the radiator shutters are still in there. Let me get this cover off and I'll show you, get a better look at it. Oh boy. I think the one on top is missing, so this thing should just come off. Yep. And set that there. So here's what we got. Not so good. Like I said, all the components are still here, but everything's just frozen. This is the pivot point here. It's supposed to close them, looks like that way. Spray some lube all over the whole thing. Now in theory, if I just tap this with the hammer, it should push that lever that way and actuate the shutters. Yeah, it's working. Let's try to pull it back. We have movement. So that's open, and that's closed. Very, very cool. Not many of these old tractors still have the radiator shutters present at all, let alone all the components still there and actually semi-working. So this is pretty rare in my opinion, in my experience. Well, that's good. That gives me something to work with. I'm pretty much home free here. I just need to thoroughly clean this and lube everything and then reattach the rest of the linkage, and I think we'll have operating shutters. And that's good because winter is coming, and I still haven't gotten this tractor all the way up to operating temperature yet. I haven't owned it long enough, haven't been able to use it. So the heads of these little screws are getting soft and they're a little bit stripped, so I want to replace these two. I'm going to go ahead and replace them on both sides. There should be 6 of them. So let's go see if we can figure out what size they are. Quarter 20? Yeah, I think they're quarter 20. Threads are so dirty, they don't fit very well, but I think that's what they are. So let's get back to the sediment bowl problem. And you might not believe this, but this is the sediment bowl that came off the tractor. I looked online and I found a sediment bowl at Steiner that was $53, and I saw one online at Tractor Supply for $109. And I said, for that kind of money, let me at least attempt to clean this old one. And after a couple hours in the ultrasonic cleaner and some elbow grease, it looks really good. I think we can reuse it. Look how nice the glass turned out. These fittings, even this little screen. I cut myself a new cork gasket for it, and I think we're ready to reassemble this and have that ready at least to go back on. Get a little bit of gas oil for the threads here. And this goes on this side. So we'll get some more of this for these threads right there. Now we'll put our new, actually the screen goes on first, and then the gasket. And then the bowl and the bail, like that, and we'll just get this snug for now. And then we have a complete sediment bowl ready to go. I did not think that I was going to be able to save this, as dirty as it was, with all that tar in there and all the orifices, but ultrasonic cleaner did a great job with it, and I used some pick tools and some Q-tips and things like that, and some brake clean, and I got it done. So that saved me some money and some time as well. So that'll be ready to go. I also got some new hardware for the clamps. These are round head shoulder bolt carriage bolts, and they fit perfectly inside the squares of these little clamps. You can see the openings are square and they won't turn. And of course the nuts go on the other side. So these will be ready to go as well. So now let's take a look at these clamps. These are the two front clamps for the front tank that we're working on. There's still one on the tractor for the rear. If we take a look at the underside of the hood here, you can see the straps that are built into the hood with those little hook tabs on both sides. That's where the lower clamps connect to and fasten and secure the fuel tank. So these are the lower portion of the assembly. These go underneath the fuel tank, essentially suspend the fuel tank into the hood. I'm not going to restore these. We're just going to use them the way they are. You know, this is just on here to prevent vibration and all that stuff, and these are just completely dry rotted out. So I'm going to replace this material, also put some new rivets in there, and then these will be ready to go. All right, I've got all the rivets drilled out. Now we're going to put the new material on. And this is just, I call it muffler tape. It's, you know, it's, you wrap a muffler, for example, or a header. It's like a heat shield. You wet it first and then you wrap it tightly around something, and it acts like a heat shield. But it will work for this too. Just going to use some pop rivets here, and we're going to switch out the tip for the appropriate one. Okay, so we put the pop rivet in the gun. We want it to go through from this side. Start in the material. Line it up with the hole, and then we squeeze away. And that one's good to go. All right, all set. There are also a couple things that we need to do while the hood is off, and one is to replace the upper and lower radiator hoses. You can see they're just about ready to go. So I've got those ordered. They should be here tomorrow or the next day. In the meantime, I want to drain the coolant so that when they come in the mail we can pop them right on and keep moving forward. So draining the coolant on this tractor couldn't be much easier. We just loosen this plug. Actually, we take the plug all the way out like that, and then I just flip this ball valve down. Well, it should be coming out. Let's see if I can find a little blockage up there. Just make sure your bucket is relatively clean, and then we can reuse the coolant. Another thing that I want to get my eyes on is this internal filter and canister in here, because it's virtually impossible to look up in there when the hood is on, and this is just a much easier way to do. We just want to make sure this isn't clogged, you know, with dirt and debris. So it looks like there's 1, 2, 3 bolts on top, and these are rusted out, man. I don't know. We'll soak them with some PB Blaster for the moment. And I think even before I try to break them free, I'm going to put some heat to it, and then we'll try with the impact gun after that. All right, here we go. Gently at first. I think we got that one. That was too easy. Number 2. Number 3. Oh yeah, no problem. Okay, we got it. Let's go bring this in the shop and see how it looks. Well, could be worse, but I'm glad we took it off. I think I'll get the oil cup off also and just, you know, shoot a bunch of air through this and maybe some brake clean, and I think she'll be good to go. I remember now when I did this in one of the earlier videos. Can you see the holes in there? Maybe if I turn the light off. There you go. So this old thing is not going to hold oil anymore. So I'll have to get a new one of those, but in the meantime, I just want to make sure this element is, you know, somewhat clean. We don't want the engine to be ingesting a bunch of this nastiness. All right, it's done. I am so glad I did that, man. There's a lot of dirt and dust that came out of this. So I took some time to blow it out both directions with liquid and air. All right, the coolant is drained. Let's see if we can get this upper radiator hose off. When they get to be this old and crusty, sometimes it's difficult to get them off. And I'm not talking about the clamps, I'm talking about the hose itself. Kind of, you know, it fixes itself to the tractor. These old clamps seem fine. I think we can reuse them. Let's see if we can make a cut. Okay, get some pliers and see if I can reach in there and kind of pry on it and maybe just rip it apart like that. Oh my goodness, this poor tractor is, I swear, this is just had one foot in the grave when we got it. Luckily, I think this one is savable, but it's just so neglected. Things are in such terrible condition. Guys, look at this. All that stuff is in our cooling system. A lot of it was probably circulating, and a lot of it is probably just, you know, stuck in certain places. So we'll maybe I'll get a hose or something and just try to flush the system the best I can. But when it gets to be this bad, you run the danger of clogging the coolant passages in the block and in the head, and then when that happens, the motor overheats and blows up. So now, it wasn't overheating when we were running it before, but like I said, I never did get it up to operating temperature, so maybe we don't yet have a serious clog in here. Let's just hope that's the case anyway. I got the lower hose off as well, and it was the same thing. There was, you know, ½ inch of dirt piled up in there in the bottom. So of course the textbook thing when you find something like that in your coolant system is to take the head off and check the water jackets, but we're not going to do that now. The tractor runs all right and it's not overheating, so we're just going to put the new rad hoses back on, and then I'm going to flush the system and see what that does and see if we can get some more of this crap out of it, and we'll just put it back together. The only thing that I'm not going to do now that we know that is I'm not going to reuse this coolant. I was going to strain it and put it back in, but I don't think I will. It's just there's just too much junk in there, so we'll just recycle this. Off camera, I did get the radiator shutters mostly clean, got all that caked on dirt off of it. So let's go ahead and put a good dose of oil on all the moving parts, maybe even the shutters themselves, just to prevent some rust. Yeah, you can even see a little bit of green in there, factory green. They actually work very well now that they're clean, freed up. So before we go any further with this, I'm going to try to stick my fancy camera scope down there and see if we can see anything worthwhile. So the camera is going in this hole, it's going down this pipe to this coolant manifold, if you will. Now this photo here, we're basically looking straight down this way, and as you can see, it looks, I hate to use the word clean, but it's not completely clogged like it could have been. So we'll take that as good news for now, and let's check the bottom one. See if we can see anything down here. There's definitely more sludge in this bottom pipe. I guess that makes sense because of gravity and the weight of the sludge itself is probably going to settle at the lowest part of the engine. I was not able to get a good photo or video for you of the lower, but it looked, like I said, there was more sludge in the lower one, but besides that, it looked pretty much the same as the top. That is, things were not completely clogged. There was just junk in there. So I think we're safe to go ahead and attempt to flush the system with some water. Now, you can see we got some issues here. The end of the opening here is a little bit boogered up. I need to take a wire wheel and perhaps even a grinder, because that's a sharp edge right there, and clean this all up. And then we need to put the boots on temporarily on the top and the bottom, and then we're going to go ahead and flush this out with some water. So I'm going to get this all done off camera, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to flush the system. For anybody wondering out there, the internal diameter of these coolant hoses is 2 5/8, and as far as the length goes, the top one is about 6 inches, and I cut the bottom one to about 4.5 inches, but that one you just kind of have to eyeball when you cut it. First, I'm going to fill up the entire system with the hose, leaving the ball valve down there closed. and then we'll empty it, see what comes out, and then we'll do more of a continuous flush after that. So let's go ahead and get going here. Now, I didn't put any clamps on these hoses yet because they're just temporary. So if they drip a little bit during this process, that's no big deal. When the whole thing is done, I'm going to take these back off and put some RTV on there just to make sure they seal. All right, the system is full. Let's open this up and see what comes out. Just like before, there's a clog in there, which is what we want. We want to get all this stuff out of there. So I need to get a screwdriver and remove that clog so it can drain. Or just a stick maybe. So I had to fill the system up and flush it with water 3 times before it started to run clear. So I guess we'll call that good enough for now. These upper hose clamps are okay. The bottom ones need to be replaced. So I figure I'll just replace all 4 of them. But I had no luck finding a 3-inch hose clamp at 3 different auto parts stores. What I'm going to do is order them on Amazon. They'll probably be here tomorrow. You know how convenient Amazon is sometimes. And in the meantime, I'm going to use the old clamps to cinch everything down and seal everything up. And then when the new ones arrive, I will replace the old with the new. For coolant hoses like this, I don't normally use any RTV at all. I put them on dry. But when the pipes are pitted, you know, or not completely round or something, then yes, I do like to use some RTV to fill in the low spots. And there's no way to do this without messing my sealant up a little bit, but I'll do the best I can here. Manhandle it. That was pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and cinch these down, and I'll let this set overnight before I add any coolant to the system and give that RTV a chance to set up, and then it shouldn't leak at all. And get some of this sealant off of there. Brake clean works really well to clean this off when it's still wet. Because it kind of gets everywhere. Let me get a little bit more on the top here. All right, that's pretty good. So besides adding more weight to the hood, I think it's going to be easier to put the tank in the hood, put the straps on and secure it before we try to put it back on the tractor. Like that. Now, if you're wondering why I painted the gas tank and nothing else yet, well, because we're not ready to do that, quite simply. I still need to go through the rest of the tractor mechanically, and when we're all done with that, then I can go back and disassemble everything again and maybe put a paint job on everything. But right now, this is not the time, so we're just going to reassemble it. So these clamps go like that, and then underneath the clamps on the side of the hood. That's why I think this might be easier to do this when it's off the tractor because everything is kind of floppy and kind of hard to deal with. So that one's on there. I guess I'll put this back one on this side, and then we'll see if we can press everything together. Well, I had to turn the camera off there so I could let some obscenities fly. So I got this side on. Now we'll go ahead and get this side done. Let's make sure that the cap is lined up. Yeah, it looks like it's good. Okay. Yeah. I hope this works. I hope we don't have to take it back off for some reason. So if you look right there, you can see the gas tank is actually notched where that strap goes through, and it's the same on all sides. So that's how you know everything is aligned, basically. Get those notches lined up, and then the fuel cap will fit perfectly through the hole in the top. This here is the pivot mechanism for the radiator shutter linkage. I might as well lube this guy up while we're right here. All right, here we go. This thing has some weight to it now. Well, the hood is where it wants to be for the most part, but the only thing I made a mistake on is the control rod for the radiator shutters. It's supposed to go above the mount for the rear gas tank and run up in here under the hood. So I'm gonna have to disconnect it from that end and then stick it back in and refasten it. So I'll do that real quick and bring it right back. All right, I've got the radiator shutter linkage back where it needs to be up in here, and it's no big deal to do that. When the hood is on, you just unscrew this knob all the way and pull it out that way and stick it back in. I still have to put these 3 bolts in on both sides. Other than that, the tin is all on and the gas tanks are secure. So I'm not going to start this yet because we still have to wait 24 hours for that sealant to set up. But in the meantime, now that I have the sediment bowl on, we can actually put some gasoline in our new tank and turn the valve on and see if it leaks anywhere. So I'm going to put a couple gallons in to start, and we'll see if we have any leaks or not. It all looks good so far. Let me go ahead and turn the valve on, sediment bowl. Sometimes you get a pocket of air in there, like there is right there. The valve is open, but nothing's coming out. So you gotta loosen the bowl and let that air out. All right, we'll snug it back down. Look at that nice, clean fuel. All right, so far so good. I've got the drain open on the bottom of the bowl of the carburetor, and I'm going to turn the valve up on the dash now, and we're going to see if we can get fuel to flow for the first time in my possession from this front tank all the way to the carburetor. And if it starts to run out the bottom, that means we're good. So here we go. We are getting a nice flow of fuel from the new tank that we put in, but I have a leak right up here on the fitting between the sediment bowl and the valve. So let me fiddle with that for a minute. All right, it's been about 15 minutes now. I've got all the valves open. Sediment bowl valve is open. The one on the dash for the front tank is open. We've got no leaks in the system. It's looks like it's 100% dry. I'm still surprised I was able to reuse that sediment bowl. It looked like it was too far gone, but one thing we lucked out on is that for some reason the tar from the gas tank and the sediment bowl never made its way into the three-way valve here, so the valve was open and clear. So that was a break. We didn't have to mess with that, and the valve still works. On the dash here, that is the valve for the fuel. Now remember, these tractors were considered all fuel tractors. That is, they were intended to be started on gasoline, which is the rear tank. That's why there's a G there. And then after it reaches operating temperature, you flip the valve up to the front tank. F, I guess that just stands for fuel. You know, after the engine gets up to operating temperature, you could have run kerosene or some kind of tractor fuel, distillate, because that stuff was much cheaper back then than gasoline. So start on gasoline and then switch over to the cheap fuel once it gets hot. And then when you're ready to shut these things back down, you had to switch back to gasoline and let it run for a couple of minutes to get the tractor fuel, you know, through the system, because next time when you go to start it cold, it will only start on gas. You can't start them cold on the tractor fuel or the kerosene. This lever is pretty stiff, so I have to use pliers sometimes to operate it. That's the rear tank on gasoline, and then down to off. I can usually turn it from off to gasoline with my hands, but it's pretty stiff. But that valve works, that's great. Well, we got a lot done today. That's always good. So tomorrow, put coolant in it, put those new hose clamps on the coolant hoses, put those remaining bolts in the front tin, and then I'll take it for a drive and see if it'll run on the front tank, and probably the first time in 30 years. So I'll see you guys tomorrow and we'll get this wrapped up. Good morning, everybody. 2 days have actually passed, and we're going to come out here and finish up this video. One thing I noticed right away that I hadn't noticed before is that the last guy that worked on this rig put the cotter key in here, but it was sticking out like 3/4 of an inch. And same thing with the legs on the back. They were kind of sticking out far. It's like a really long cotter key that he used. And what was happening when I was trying to turn the valve, the cotter key was hitting this pipe, and so are the ends on the other side, and that's why the valve was hard to turn. Remember I said I had to use pliers to operate it sometimes? Well, now I can just operate it by my hand, which of course is the way it's supposed to be. So that was kind of a fun thing to notice, and an easy fix to be sure. I just hammered it through a little bit and cut off the ends and bent them over. And now I can turn the valve easily with my hands. That's the way it's supposed to be. I've also got my new hose clamps installed. You can see there on the lower. And the upper. And I can make the safe assumption, because we let this sit for 24 hours, that RTV is gonna provide a no leak seal there. So now let's get some coolant into the system, get the tractor started, and see if we can get this thing to run off the front fuel tank for the first time in probably 30 years. So for the coolant, I used conventional green antifreeze, and I use the concentrate, so I effectively make my own 50-50 mix, because I add distilled water to the equation. This tractor takes about 5 to 5.5 gallons. So what I'll do is I'll put a gallon of antifreeze in, then a gallon of water, then a gallon of antifreeze, a gallon of water, so on and so forth, until I get it up to the full level. And by alternating that way, it just kind of helps it mix itself inside the tractor. And this is also going to be the cheaper option. So buying 1 gallon of concentrate and 1 gallon of distilled water is going to be cheaper than buying 1 gallon of the pre-mixed 50-50 stuff. It's about 41 degrees out this morning, so we'll see how the tractor does. So our radiator hoses are 100% sealed up and dry, so that worked out well. This tractor doesn't leak oil. It's very unusual. The only thing that I don't like is the fitting here between the sediment bowl and the three-way valve. It's kind of a Mickey Mouse operation there. It's just one fitting and it screws into both at the same time, so it's kind of like halfway screwed into the sediment bowl and halfway screwed into the three-way valve, and it tends to seep. You know, it's not dripping, but it just tends to seep a little bit of gas, and the fitting is kind of wet on the bottom. But I think what I'm going to do off camera is put the sediment bowl in a different orientation and then get like a 90-degree fitting for the three-way valve, and then make up some type of more traditional connection here between the two pieces. I mean, this is working, and in fact it wasn't leaking yesterday, but I came out this morning and there was some wetness on the bottom of it. I think we can improve upon that. We'll do something different there. This little girl has come a long way in the few months that I've owned it. If you remember from those first couple videos, this thing was just a basket case, but it's actually going to be a pretty reliable tractor now, and in fact already is. This flapper doesn't really cover the whole exhaust pipe on top. It looks like it's bent, or oh, it's cracked right there, that's why. Let me see if I can just whack this thing that way a little bit. Oh, I think that actually worked. Is it straight? Yeah. All right, well, good enough for now. This tractor is most likely going to live outside, at least for the near future. So even though I kind of fixed this here, I think I'll put a coffee can over the top just to be safe, because we do get some precipitation around here in the winter time. Well, I didn't think that this fuel tank project was going to be quite so much work. It was kind of like peeling an onion, you know. We get a layer peeled off and then find something else that needs to be fixed, and another layer under that, and another layer under that. But eventually we came back around and got everything fixed that needed to be fixed for this particular job. So I'm very happy with that. The fuel tank is working. The tractor's running off the front tank. In fact, it will run off either tank now, because the rear tank was already good and clean. So we could run gasoline in both of them, or we could actually run it as an all-fuel tractor if we want. It's all set up to do that. But of course, kerosene is much more expensive than gasoline these days, so that doesn't make much sense. Anyway, I think the next thing we're going to do is investigate the generator. We'll crack that thing apart and see if I can get it to make electricity again. And you know, if we can get it fixed, great. If not, I'll probably try to source another one. And if we do get the generator working, I'll probably reinstall the lights on both sides and put a light switch up there just so they can be operational. And we'll keep moving forward. The other big thing that I haven't done on the tractor yet is I haven't touched the rear lift at all. I don't even know if it works. I know the PTO works, but I don't know anything about this rear lift. It's not like I'm going to use it anyway, but you know, we want to know if it works, and if it's something easy, I'll go ahead and fix it. Thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate the support, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.